Hello, everyone, and welcome to the It's the Pictures podcast. This is episode number 173. My name is Evan Crean, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Max Scoville.
Hello, everyone. Hi, Evan.
Hey, Max, how you doing?
Doing fine. I'm doing good. You know, it's funny. I've been buying some movies from the biannual Criterion sale that's been going on at Barnes and Noble, and
Ooh,
I just keep on stacking the movies up. Oh, I bought it and now I have to watch it. And so I have a stack of 10 movies that I have planned to get through. Not necessarily even from this sale. But just stuff that I haven't watched in a while that I wanted to see, whether it was like Robert Altman's Nashville or Akira Kurosawa's High and Low, like stuff that I just want to revisit. So, yeah, I'm really excited to watch some Criterions.
nice. Yeah, we've definitely have some hot days ahead of us here, at least in Massachusetts. I don't know about you down in Rhode Island, but probably some time you're going to want to spend indoors.
I'm glad that the 4th of July holiday is over. Yeah, I love the brouhaha of the holiday and everything, but when you have small children, you just want the fireworks to be over.
Yeah, you're telling me. I mean, in our neighborhood, the last 2 days in a row, people have been just shooting off fireworks late into the night. And between having 3 dogs, a cat, and a baby under our roof, it's not fun times. I'll tell you that. But anyway, enough about that. What did you grab in the Criterion sale? What movies did you pick up?
Thus far, I've picked up um, Anatomy of a Fall, the Oscar International Best Picture winner.
Nice.
I picked up All That Breeze, which is a documentary that I loved from the past year. I think it might have been nominated for Best Documentary.
Hmm.
Peeping Tom. Let's see what else. I pre-ordered Risky Business on 4K.
Oh, nice.
And I've also pre-ordered the 4K remaster Les Samurai, the Alain Delon film um, by Melville, and I really enjoy that film, and looking forward to the high res update.
Very nice. Well, that's exciting. Got some stuff to look forward to, including the stack that you've already created for yourself.
Yeah, it's crazy, and I got stuff to review, Evan, and I've gotten the new Paramount Presents Chinatown or Twister in 4K that I'm just those movies are I'm looking to put on, just I have a lot of familiarity with them and just want to see their new restorations and sounds and what have you, and um, not exactly I don't know, the the heavy films that maybe some of the other movies I have in store are.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you got some lighter stuff to watch. Well,
Do
I
you
think that
normally pick something up during Criterion sales, or did you know that Risky Business is the big release for this month?
you know what, I didn't. I don't typically from Criterion. I like their selection of movies. I'm usually like a lurker.
Yeah,
I usually like look and see what's on sale, but I often don't pull the trigger on any purchases.
I think they're
Um,
doing a 4K release of Repo Man later this year.
Oh, well, I have the other I just had gotten the other release that they did of it.
All right, yeah, so it
I
would
don't
just
think
be
I'll
up
be
to bump it up
upgrading.
to 4K, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think a couple Hanukkahs ago, I got a few movies on Criterion that I actually haven't even watched yet, so probably should get on that. Some of the ones that I have in my collection, I've got Repo Man, as you mentioned. I've got Fast Times at Ridgemont High, Princess Bride, Moonstruck, and then most recently, Dave Riedel, my co-host on Spoiler Piece, bought me a copy of Devil in a Blue Dress, which I'm very much looking forward to watching at some point too.
Yeah, I have that one too, and I haven't watched it. So maybe we should both make a movie date to watch it, and then we report back on our findings of
Mhm.
Devil in a Blue Dress.
Yep. Oh, and Max, you bought me Shaft, which I also still need to watch.
Oh, yeah, I watched that, and I thought that was that essence of cool kind of movie that you would have enjoyed. So
Oh, I'm sure I'm gonna enjoy it when I sit down and watch it. Anyway, yeah, we came here to talk about some movies. Of course, we're here to talk about some of our favorite summer blockbusters, which we'll get to in a couple of minutes. But I think we wanted to first talk about some of the news that's going on in the film world. Let's see. Oh, and then I'm sure we should probably check in about our summer movie bet. I'm sure the listeners will be interested to hear about that. So the first thing I'm seeing here in the news is we got a first peek at Gladiator 2.
Yeah, this was shared by Vanity Fair last week, and to tell you the truth, Evan, I never thought like there needed to be like a Gladiator 2, and it's been rumored for years, and I was just like, I don't know if he needs to go back to this. Well, it's like um,
Mhm.
it's very obvious that the main players from the first Gladiator aren't going to be all that involved in a Gladiator 2.
Mhm.
So I was like, why bother? And certainly all this time has passed. But you know what? When those images came out, and you know they have some of the talent that they have in this movie, I'm just like, yeah, I'm kind of on board again. I'm like, it's like, give me that trailer. I want to see it.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the images myself. I never saw Gladiator. I've
Oh,
never seen the
really?
first one. That's definitely a hole in my, 90s film, watching, but, or did it come out in
Like,
2000? I'm
you're
trying to
right on the
remember.
cusp there, 2000.
Yeah,
I think
definitely
it's main competition at the Oscars that year was like Steven Soderbergh's Traffic.
gotcha, okay. But like you, I'm looking at this and I'm seeing some pretty high caliber actors here. This main image of Paul Mescal and Pedro Pascal, it's funny, their names rhyme,
Yeah.
are, duking it out, and, Pedro Pascal looks like his sword has either gotten knocked away from him or is in the air. It's a pretty cool still. Uh, so these I don't know, my interest is definitely peaked based
Yeah,
on the
Denzel
actors that they've
Washington
chosen.
is in this.
Yeah, I know, I just was scrolling down to see him looking very regal in this, this one image. So, yeah, I don't know, maybe I will be interested in seeing this, and I probably should catch up on the first Gladiator. I know it's probably not hugely, necessary, right? Is because this is kind of like is this like a direct sequel, or is this more kind of like spiritual sequel?
It is it has like I think like there's a woman in this movie who is like the wife of Russell Crowe in the first movie, and I think she reprises her role. Like she's the only returning character from that movie. So yeah, it does kind of continue. I think like it is the son of Maximus, who Russell Crowe played in the original one. If you don't know, it's very similar to like Ben Hur, like this epic where like, oh, he was a general and then he was a slave and then he was a gladiator. Like he goes through like that's literally the taglines of the movie.
Mhm.
And Joaquin Phoenix is in it too, and uh, I I remember that movie being like my everything when it came out because of course 2000 I would have been 14 and this movie was like something like maybe I shouldn't see because it was R rated, but yeah, it was just like so cool, sword fights and um war and what have you.
Mhm.
I loved this movie when it came out, the original Gladiator.
Nice. When men were men and used
Right.
swords to settle their problems, right?
Yeah.
Nice. Well, it seems like probably it's gonna be a little while till we get Gladiator 2, right? Is it supposed to come out sometime next year?
No,
Or is it
it's this holiday season, I think, is
Oh, okay.
when it's coming out, so,
So,
uh,
soon then.
yeah, very soon. This is the first stage of its marketing blitz, I think. Um, so maybe we'll
Well, it's a
see more.
strong opening salvo, that's
Yeah.
for sure. Cool. Alright, we'll look forward to that, and then some point between now and then sounds like I gotta watch Gladiator. Let's see. So what else is on the docket here? I see we've got Steve McQueen's Blitz about the London Blitz is to open the BFI. I see we've got Saoirse Ronan, a couple other people in it.
Yeah,
Actually,
so this was rumored to be one of the big players that this awards season of 2024, and you know it's been a little while since Steve McQueen um released a film maybe of this size or this profile. Of course, he did his like 5 part Amazon series, um, and like I think the movie Lovers Rock was part of that when that was like
hmm
really really interesting movie, and I think I saw one of them, and those are also available. They're the small axe films, right? There's
Yep.
5 of them, and that's actually available in a package from Criterion too. You can pick that up during the sale. And before that, he did Widows, which I enjoyed Widows, and I was at TIFF for the premiere of that. Um, but yeah, I'm a big fan of Saoirse Ronan. Like I, ever since she did Brooklyn all those years back, I just think she has immense talent, and uh, to see her partnering with Steve McQueen for this, and as that prominent BFI opening slot that um, some of these films launch with, and I don't know. I'm excited to see it. Well, and it's funny, Evan, to correspond. Like Venice announced their opening film, and they're like opening Beetlejuice out of competition, and you're like, these movies
What?
don't seem the same. Uh,
Yeah.
so uh, yeah, I think I'm much more interested to see Blitz.
I mean, look, I'll probably end up watching Beetlejuice
Sure.
because I like Beetlejuice plenty. I love Michael Keaton, uh, and so I'm sure I'll watch it. But yeah, it seems like a weird one to be like, yeah, this is what we're going with.
um, but yeah, other than that, we don't know too much about Blitz. So outside of naming the actors and directors and where it's opening, there's not too much to talk about. But Evan, I put it
Hmm.
here on the news that I guess in like a financial report that one of the companies that's supposedly making a new Street Fighter live action film said that they had to reschedule it, and so like that is how we first learned that there's actually another live action Street Fighter film coming out.
Okay.
Um, I think Street Fighter as a franchise has had a resurgence recently, especially with Street Fighter Six. Um, I've played that game quite a bit myself, and I think it's maybe some of the best that Street Fighter's ever been. So it's good time to come up with that movie. And I know that not only is it like the big marquee title for Capcom outside of Resident Evil, but it's also like exclusive partnership with Sony. So it might be Sony who's uh, working with Capcom to try to make this movie. But Evan,
Hmm.
I was excited for this mainly because of my fond memories of the original live action Street Fighter movie with Jean Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia.
Oh yeah. Yeah, me too. This wasn't on my radar at all until I was talking about what to cover this week with you, and then we both it's funny we discovered that we both really enjoy the campy, kooky Street Fighter movie from the 90s. I think like 1994. I can't remember if I saw it in the theater. I might have like rented it at home, but that was like definitely the era of video game adaptations that were not good. Uh, they were really campy and weird. I remember this was also the era of Double Dragon, which I remember watching and liking, despite it being just an absolute shit show of a movie.
I should see that. I never saw Double Dragon.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I should see that one.
I mean, it's make some choices. I mean, you got Robert Patrick playing the villain. He's great. You got Scott Wolf and Mark Dacascos playing the brothers in it, which I never would pair them as brothers, but whatever.
They did it.
Yep. And Alyssa Milano is in it. Um,
Yeah,
yeah, so
and with Street Fighter, I think like Kylie Minogue plays Cammy, right? Cammy, right?
yeah, she does. Yeah, I feel like that's like the next highest profile person in this
Character,
movie after you get through John Claude Van Damme and Raul Julia. Also, it's just really sad that Raul Julia died while they were making this movie.
yeah.
That's such a bummer. He was so great. He's such an underrated actor. But and this is a fun movie. It's just so silly and not very good, but I like it anyway.
Yeah, I remember like how they like tried to explain like the origin of Blanca, and it's like Guile's friend, Guile played by Jean Claude Van Damme, and he like gets put into this like machine that Raul Julia's M Bison has, and like transforms him into this like green monster called Blanca, and it's just like this is really ridiculous.
Oh. Oh, for sure. For sure.
I don't remember how like Ryu and Ken play into it, which they're iconic Street Fighter characters, and like I just don't remember it all.
Yeah, me neither. I didn't remember that Ming Na Wen was Chun-Li. That she's I love her whenever she's in stuff. She's great. Alright, so it sounds like we need to revisit the original Street Fighter. Maybe I'll dust off my DVD copy that's sitting at the bottom of some boxes right now.
Yeah.
Did you ever end up seeing any of the other adaptations they did? Wasn't there a Chun-Li movie that they did and, like, maybe another Street Fighter movie that came out at
Yeah,
some
I
point?
think you're right, there was, like, Legend of Chun-Li, and no, I didn't see that. I think
Hmm.
I might have seen, like, a Street Fighter anime film at one point, but that's probably the extent of
I'm ashamed to say, Max, that I have not played a Street Fighter since the Street Fighter 2 days of Super Nintendo.
it. Hey, if you're not into fighting games, you're not into fighting games. I definitely feel like when I play fighting games, it's a different like mindset. Like if you play Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat, another popular fighting game franchise that's had quite a varied movie career, it's just like a very different mindset. You're just it's and certainly when they started adding online play for these things is when they really took off. I think more so because then you weren't just playing computers; you got to play humans wherever you were in the world.
Yeah, I think that's it. I never was big into fighting games because I was never good at learning any of the combos or the special moves. So I was always a button masher, and that only that only helps you some of the time. It really is like there's only so much button mashing you can do and be successful in fighting games like that. So I think that's why I never quite got into those games as much as
Mm-mm.
other people.
All
Mhm.
right, and then the last thing we wanted to cover is some recent departings we've had in the film community. Um,
Mhm.
as of like this morning before we recorded, John Landau, the producer of Titanic and Avatar and other features, he's partnered with James Cameron on a bunch of films. Passed away this morning, and he will his contributions to film will certainly be missed. Evan
Mhm.
wanted to mention two other actors who recently passed as well.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, Donald Sutherland and Martin Mull, who both passed away rather recently, but both had very interesting, varied careers. I think they're both very versatile actors who could play a lot of different types of parts. Um, a lot of different genres of movies too, especially Donald Sutherland. He was kinda all over the place in terms of the types of movies he could be in, like, serious drama, sci-fi, horror. I think he was so prolific, and he was in a lot of stuff, and so I feel like people kind of were always like, "Oh, Donald Sutherland, he's, popping up in everything," but not really giving, enough kind of respect for him and his versatility and the stuff he could be in. And Martin Mull too. I feel like he was kind of an underrated comedian, and always enjoyed him whenever he would pop up in things.
It's easier for me to recognize Donald Sutherland and stuff, obviously, because he was more of a leading player. Martin Mull was more like a character actor, co-star type of actor. Um,
Hmm.
and so, like, I instantly I thought, like, oh, like I was telling Evan, like the Invasion of the Body Snatchers or Don't Look Now. Like, certainly those horror Donald Sutherland's came to mind. And Evan told me he recently watched Clute, which was another Donald Sutherland movie. So a very memorable careers by all three men, and they will certainly be missed.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on a more positive note, Max, let's talk about our summer movie bet that's going on.
Positive
Up
for who?
Positive for you, obviously. I mean, Max is beating the crap out of me here in the in the rankings here. His set of movies, which, if you didn't remember, included Inside Out 2, Despicable Me 4, Twisters, Kingdom of Planet of the Apes, and A Quiet Place Day 1. He's had all but one of those movies debut, and he's leading with a total of 900 $900,776,000 to my roster of movies, and I still have 2 that haven't come out, but I'm not anticipating that they're gonna make up enough grounds. We've got Deadpool and Wolverine, The Fall Guy, Maxine, Borderlands, and Bad Boys Ride or Die. And Bad Boys Ride or Die has been doing pretty well, actually. I think it's definitely helped me some, but I only have 275,705,000. So I have a lot of ground to make up. It will be interesting to see after Deadpool and Wolverine comes out and Borderlands to see how much ground I'm able to make up, or if it's just too much and I can't I can't come back from this.
Yeah, because it's funny, Evan, because the way that these snake pools work is that like Deadpool and Wolverine would have to be so far ahead of both Inside Out 2 and Despicable Me 4, and then like I don't know. From there, I don't know what you should have picked. I guess next is the argument Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. I don't know. Is it, or you already had Bad Boys Ride or Die, which will
Mhm.
top out higher than that, anyways. Um, we have just seen really the opening of A Quiet Place Day One's. Its second weekend just came by. So it will easily cross 100 million, but I wonder whether that one will top out as well.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. You saw it, right? Quiet
What
Place Day 1?
day one? Yeah, I'm gonna be talking about it later.
Nice. Cool. Okay. So we'll save that for later. But yeah, that's where we are, folks. Max is winning by a lot, and moral of the story is next time I will take a closer look and not pick a movie like Maxine, which did not do as good at the box office as I thought in my head.
Maxine did double the opening weekend of Pearl, so I
Yeah.
mean, I think a 15 million domestic run is in play here.
Great. Versus their 533,122,169,000,000, like you
Right.
said, almost $100 million movies. Well, lesson learned for next year, folks.
And
All right.
now we're gonna move on, right?
Yeah. Yeah, let's jump right into talk about summer blockbusters. So we found a list of best 75 best summer blockbusters of all time on Rotten Tomatoes, and I believe that's is it also or is it arranged by Rotten Tomato rating? No, it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I think that's how
Usually
they do it because like the kind of like homers there on Tomatoes, and they like to go by their own books and like what they justify.
yeah. So we looked through this list of 75 best summer blockbusters and kind of made our own kind of short lists of some of our favorite summer blockbusters to talk about. And there's definitely some overlap between our lists. So definitely looking forward to talking about them. But I don't know, Max, you want to just kind of do one from each of our lists, or do you want to share yours and we'll talk about those and go to mine? How do you want to do it?
Yeah, I mean, like I like the one for one thing, so then we're not talking too long. But I was joking with Evan before we sat down to do this, and I knew that like what we'd probably be talking about is like a majority of Steven Spielberg movies because he's like the king of the
Hmm.
blockbuster, right? I mean, um,
Yes.
if you think of his more recent output, Ready Player One was probably his biggest like blockbuster type movie because he hasn't made one like that in a while. He's
Hmm.
made movies like West Side Story and The Fablemans, not necessarily the blockbusters he was known for earlier in his career, whether it be Jaws or Jurassic Park or E.T., like these movies that like literally broke apart the box office and changed what audiences expected out of summer movies. These movies that not only pushed the limits of what you could expect narratively, but also uh, technology driven, because certainly he would explore more. If maybe people take Jurassic Park for granted now, but it was just like this phenomenal movie when it came out, and so many of its methods to make it work have been emulated for years afterwards. So
Hmm. Yeah.
Spielberg certainly uh, was at the head of the game there.
Yeah, it's true. And we'll obviously be talking about a few of his movies. But Max, where do you want to start on in terms of the movies you want to talk about?
So I think what better way to start coming off a 4th of July weekend is Jaws, right?
Correct.
Uh,
Yep.
it was funny. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, Evan, and I was wearing my Jaws tank top at the beach, 3rd of July, and I was like, "Oh, isn't this a great time to be wearing a Jaws tank top?" And they're like, "Oh, why?" I'm like, "Because of Independence Day." And they're like, "Oh, is that an Independence Day movie?" And I was like, "Friend, yes, it's a very much an
Yes.
Independence Day movie."
Yeah, it
I'm like,
is.
it's like the movie is totally hinges on whether or not they're going to close the beach, because the movie starts and there's a vicious shark attack, which leaves a swimmer, a young woman, dismembered, and our police chief Richard Brody um, finds finds the body and decides that they need to close the beach and they need to find the animal, presumably a shark, that did this. And you
Mhm.
have a local mayor of this fishing town, and the movie was recorded, filmed in Martha's Vineyard, so they're also very aware of being a summer town, saying that you can't close the beaches. You know, all our businesses here live and die on the beaches. So there's a lot of the first half of the movie is very much like political intrigue and just the fear of what the shark can do. It's funny, Evan. Like I maybe the first like 5 times I watched this movie, I didn't really cut it in half in my mind so much as I do
Mhm.
now. But it's
Yeah.
very much a movie of two halves, and they're both excellent.
Yeah, it's true.
Because you have the political machinations and the will they won't they, not seeing the shark, just wondering like what it is. That was a great play, you know, borrowed from classic horror movies of not showing the monster until you have to. Um, but that then they decide that they've had enough, and the police chief, a sea biologist played by Richard Dreyfuss,
Mhm.
and a old fisherman go out there, and played by Robert Shaw, and they go out there and try to find that animal, and it's just really fantastic movie, Evan. I think recently, I we did something, John and I, with our we made our own sight and sound list, because like they redid it a few years back and like picked their 10 favorite movies. And I think like when push comes to shove, Jaws is my favorite Spielberg movie. There's certainly ones that I love a ton, but
Mhm.
just for everything that this movie does, and the dialogue is so memorable, and I don't know. It's funny. I listen, and Richard Dreyfuss has been in the news recently for not great comments he made during a Jaws screening.
Oy
Uh,
vey.
and it's funny because this movie made me fall for Richard Dreyfuss as an actor. I was like, oh shit, I need Close Encounters. You know, I love him in that, and I was like, oh, Mr. Holland's Opus, and you try not to get soured on with things the guy says like 50 years later, but
Mhm.
I still love Jaws quite a bit. And Stern Pinball released a pinball table of Jaws recently, and I've been playing that when I go to arcades. And while the machine isn't really exactly what I want out of a Jaws pinball machine, it's just a fun thing to play and to have the John Williams music, and it has a chum bucket on the table and a shark that you can hit. So
Nice.
it's a pretty good time. But do you have fond memories of Jaws? Is this a movie that you revisit often, Evan?
Oh, definitely. So as a New Englander, it's kind of, in integral. I feel like rite of passage is watching Jaws. And then, watching Jaws during the summertime is kind of its own thing, around the 4th of July. I know in Boston, it's a big thing during the summer. The local theaters love to show Jaws, and there's nothing quite like watching Jaws on like a hot New England afternoon. And I remember seeing it at the Somerville Theater and feeling like I could almost like smell the sea air in the theater. and it's quite the experience to see on the big screen. And then, I think you alluded to this earlier, but a lot of people consider Jaws to kind of be the first blockbuster, so it's a trendsetter in that regard. But it's also really impressive movie on a lot of levels in terms of, the craft of it, the acting, the score, as you mentioned, it's iconic score that kind of everybody knows, the special effects, and it's like, if you know anything about the behind the scenes drama of the movie, it's amazing that it came together to be successful because it was plagued with issues.
Yeah, the shark in
Whether
town.
yeah, they made this, animatronic shark that they hadn't tested in the water, and it was having all kinds of problems, and, it almost wasn't, it was, over budget, late in production. There were just all kinds of problems in this movie, and it's a miracle that it all came together, but it really did. It's a hell of a movie. It's one of my favorite summer movies, one of my favorite movies in general. And, I think you've talked about already some of the reasons, the performances in it, the kind of three leads here, the political drama in the town. A lot of people have argued about whether Jaws is a horror movie or not. I firmly believe that it is a horror movie. I think because some people kind of treat horror movie as kind of like like a bad label for something, or they kind of like lower their respect as soon as they say the words horror movie. But I think it is. I think it's a really well done horror movie. It's spooky and creepy, and the shark, oh god, that scene where Roy Scheider turns around and sees the shark is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I think, like, one of the best jump scares in all of movie history is when, like, Richard Dreyfuss is under the water looking for this boat that's, under the water, and you see just all of a sudden see this body coming, like, through your vision, and you're like, "I've seen that movie maybe 10 times now, and every time I see that of the audio cue and the visual, I still jump." It's just the Richard Brody's son gets a new like little boat and he's playing with it by the bridges, and like the wife is like, "Oh yeah, let him play. It's his birthday. He has a
Mhm.
new boat." And then she like reads the book about sharks and like how they can get up to the deck, and she's like, "You get out of that boat right now, Mister."
Yep, that's a great scene. And then I know a lot of people have kind of made memes about Alex Kintner in
Yeah.
the movie. They're always like, "Remember Alex Kintner who died?" The kid who dies. Yeah, so Jaws has a whole kind of, lore, and, it has its fans, and it's great. It's a great movie. I don't know what else more to say about it.
Should we stay on the Spielberg train with one of your movies?
Yeah, sure. Let's jump to one of my favorites, Raiders of the Lost Ark, which is one of my all-time favorite movies. And also, I was a huge, huge Indiana Jones fan as a kid. And I just recently found out, as of last week, that I share a birthday with Indiana Jones. I never knew what his birthday was, and then, they're working on a new Indiana Jones video game, and they're posted on their Facebook page like, "Oh, happy birthday to Indiana Jones." I was like, "Wait, I share a birthday with one of my favorite characters from movies of all time? This is amazing." But yeah, I had Raiders of the Lost Ark on VHS. And I watched it so many times, Max, that if it were not for tracking tracking on VHS, where you could, like, kind of like you had an old kind of, like, worn tape that wasn't playing so good, if it weren't for that, my copy would be unwatchable because I watched this so many times as a kid. I loved this movie. It's, yeah, Indiana Jones chasing the lost Ark of the Covenant, fighting Nazis as he loves to do. It's just a really exciting adventure movie. Love Harrison Ford, love Karen Allen. I think that's the best pairing of Indy and a leading lady in the movies. Um,
So much they
jo-
tried to do it twice.
yeah, exactly. They try to do it again, much less successfully in Crystal Skull. I love John Rhys Davies as Sala. He was a great supporting character and a fun guy. And I'll also just like I know all the behind the scenes stuff about how basically Tom Selleck almost became Indiana Jones, um, and I'm glad that it turned out the way it did. I'm glad they were able to get Harrison Ford because he's perfect. Like, he's just you think of Indiana Jones, you think of Harrison Ford. Just such an iconic performance. Uh, Amazing action movie, so well paced, so exciting. I love the truck chase sequence in the film. That unto itself also has a really interesting backstory. The um the stuntman who did it, he broke his back doing a similar stunt, like a stagecoach stunt in like a western where you had to climb under the stagecoach while it was running along. And he healed up and he got the opportunity to do this stunt and decided that like he needed to do it. Like he needed to successfully complete this stunt to like to get even basically, and he did. And it's, oh my god, it's so harrowing seeing Indy like being dragged under a truck and having to fight all the Nazis all the way through that just crazy sequence. What about you, Max? How do you feel about Raiders of the Lost Ark?
Oh, I love the movie quite a bit. It's funny, Evan. Like when I was trying to debate whether or not to put Jaws on my list of 10 or Raiders, it would be Raiders, and it's that Spielberg tried to like, well, maybe not Spielberg as much as even the studio. They tried to capture the magic of Raiders 4 times after Raiders came out, and it's just impossible. I think that every other movie in the Indiana Jones franchise exists within the shadow of Raiders, and
Yes.
I think they're all wonderful. We did a an episode of Indiana Jones movies when Dial of Destiny came out, and I found that I like all 5 movies with various degrees. I think they're all entertaining. They're all well directed, and Harrison Ford's always a joy to watch. But they all live in the shadow of Raiders, and like that is so far a step above everybody else that um you say like what it's that tier, and then you kind of mix the other ones together. I know there's a lot of purists who like it better when Harrison Ford was younger and he could do the stunts, and
Yeah.
Temple of Doom and Last Crusade, as opposed to later on where it seems like he's being stretched to his limits. um but Raiders is such a magical project, Evan. It was a collaboration between George Lucas and Steven Spielberg, hot off of their successes with either Jaws or Star Wars, and
Mhm.
they wanted to capture this idea of the serials that they used to read as children. And when you watch Indiana Jones, it's hard to imagine that it wasn't already something like pre-existing material uh, that they just adapted, because
Mhm.
it's such a character that's like well lived in and well developed, and it just Harrison Ford just sinks into that the hat and using the whip there, and it's just such a iconic image and role for him. And people have a hard time often picking like what they think is more iconic for Harrison Ford, whether it be his role as Han Solo in the Star Wars movies or Indiana Jones. And arguably it's probably Indiana Jones. It's the movie where he really was. He's Indiana Jones. I mean, they've tried. It seems like they've tried to pass on the hat, or have someone else in the role, and I don't know if they're ever going to do that, or at least wait until Harrison Ford has passed away in honor of him. But it's hard to imagine anybody else portraying Indiana Jones. And uh, Raiders is such a enjoyable film from start to finish. You already mentioned one of the set pieces in the movie. Um, his other wonderful set pieces. And it's funny that the end of the movie, the last 25 minutes or so, doesn't really have a lot of action sequences. It,
No.
it really slows down when they're trying to find out what the Ark of the Covenant can do. And that doesn't take away from how memorable or exciting Raiders is. And I think that's a testament to the film.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm embarrassed to say I still haven't seen Dial of Destiny. I probably should watch it. I just feel like I was so scarred after Crystal Skull. Like, I showed up to that movie, Max, wearing my Indiana Jones hat and jacket and
Oh,
was just so disappointed by the results.
Yeah, I think, like, I said this now, it's like, maybe now that Crystal Skull isn't the last Indiana Jones movie, like, people can look at it and be like, "Okay, so this wasn't the last time we'd ever see Harrison Ford in this," and, like, maybe they can give it some, like, slack, and, it's funny, they treat, Shia LaBeouf's character in Dial of Destiny like Poochie in The Simpsons, like, "Oh, Poochie was on another planet because like, they mentioned him briefly in passing, but, like, he was such a
Mhm.
prominent part, supposedly Indiana Jones' son. But uh he is not in Dial of Destiny, so
Oh,
uh
darn.
um yeah, so it's another clean slate. And I talked to somebody else recently, my brother-in-law, and he's like, "Oh, I realized I hadn't watched Dial of Destiny yet," and I turned it on. He's like, "It was fine. It was fun." I guess
Mhm.
if your expectations are for Raiders, or I know many people probably prefer Last Crusade as the second favorite. If you're looking for those, I don't think it quite reaches those heights, but yeah, it's a fun, adventurous, goofy movie like Indiana Jones is known for.
Sweet. Well, I'll add it to the to the list of many
Add it to the
that I
list.
need to see. Um, and, yeah, we should jump to, one of your picks.
Let, let,
Which one do you wanna talk about?
let's jump to a high flyer, if you will. This is Spider-Man 2 from
Ooh.
2004, and this was Tobey Maguire's second outing as the web-slinging hero, with Kirsten Dunst as Mary Jane, instead of having William Dafoe as the Green Goblin, who William Dafoe did an excellent job. I think it's funny watching No Way Home as the newest Spider-Man movie that came out. Seeing William Dafoe again and Alfred Molina and some of those other classic Spider-Man villains, you realize like how much fun those actors were having in villain roles. And
Oh, yeah,
um,
totally.
I think Alfred Molina as Doc Ock was fantastic casting.
Mhm,
Molina is not necessarily known in these big blockbuster league roles. Certainly after Spider-Man 2, he did not go on to have a blockbuster career. He stuck to the kind of productions that he enjoyed. But
mhm.
I just I like the story of this one. I think like the original Spider-Man video game that Sony released more recently takes a lot of this kind of mythology from this movie, or like from this time period of Spider-Man, and it's certainly the relationship between Peter Parker and Doc Ock, and how they were uh, best friends and then turned had to fight against each other.
Mhm.
But I as fun as I find the original Spider-Man movie to be, and that certainly felt like a passing, because arguably there's stages in the superhero movies, Evan, in my opinion. Like, you had the really campy stuff, which could be fun with Tim Burton's Batman and Batman Returns, and even before that, a little bit with Richard Donner's Superman. Those were more campy, fun movies.
Mhm.
Then you had stuff like the X-Men come out, and the rightfully disgraced Bryan Singer. You had stuff like the Spider-Man from Sam Raimi. He was having these are very much have Sam Raimi's fingerprints on them. There's a scene in Spider-Man 2, which I guess Octavius, Alfred Molina's character, is getting his robotic arms attached, and it's like that feels like right in his wheelhouse. It's like this like medical scary sequence where like uh Octavius is like fighting these doctors, and it's just like really creepy and funny. But and that's like what Sam Raimi was for. And if you've listened to our podcast before, we probably talked about the Spider-Man movies in general, because I think we talked about Sam Raimi and his Evil Dead movies a few years back. But uh, I have a lot of fond memories of these Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies, specifically the first two. Unsurprisingly, the third one
Mhm.
is more campy, or at least it had too many villains. I think that was another thing about it. I really think that out of a lot of Spider-Man movies, Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire and Alfred Molina was really showing the way of how big these superhero movies could be. Like, these were humongous movies at the box office, and um, just sent on a whole nother level for Spider-Man and company.
I feel like I was in the minority of people who didn't love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies, despite loving Sam Raimi, by the way, in the Evil Dead movies. I just
Have you visited them recently? I mean,
no, I feel like I just never loved Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
oh,
I always felt like Spider-Man as a character to me needed to ride a kind of line between being kinda nerdy, but also being kinda goofy and funny and fun, and I always felt like Tobey Maguire turned it too nerdy for me and not enough of the, like, campy, wisecracking Spider-Man that I know and love.
which one do
But
you
I
like
have
out of the three that that have been cast by Sony?
I think I've liked Tom Holland the best,
Yeah.
but watching Spider-Man: No Way Home and seeing Tobey Maguire play Spider-Man again, I actually really enjoyed his kind of, like, updated Spider-Man. I liked him a lot in No Way Home, and I liked Andrew Garfield, a lot in No Way Home. I thought they did a really great job together as a group of playing, kind of 3 different versions of that character, so maybe I should go back and revisit these and see if I like them better. Funny
Yeah,
though.
I mean, if you have more experience with Sam Raimi now, maybe, like, even that would you could see more of his flourishes in these movies.
Yeah, probably. And I think it's kind of funny we talked about Raiders and Spider-Man 2 back to back because Alfred Molina is in both of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
Molina's
I
very briefly in Raiders.
Right, you throw me the idol, I'll throw you the whip.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe I should revisit the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies and see if I can get over my initial kind of distaste for Tobey Maguire as Spider-Man.
I think, like, for me, I really was excited by his selection. I had seen his movie, Pleasantville before,
Mhm,
watching him as Spider-Man, and I thought, like, at least from that performance, I could definitely see him as Peter Parker and play that kind of role, and, certainly, yeah, they were looking for a guy who would portray that kinda nerdiness, and, he certainly did it. I don't know where to place Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane. If there's one thing that they've done, which is a lot of fun out of the different Spider-Man series live actions that they've had, you had Kirsten Dunst play Mary Jane, and Zendaya plays her own version of Mary Jane, but just kind of named MJ. But it's
mhm,
pretty much the same kind of character, but with a different personality. And then they did it very differently for the Andrew Garfield's movies and had his old fling Gwen Stacy play the love interest in those movies. But
mhm.
yeah, I remember Spider-Man 1 and 2 kinda, like, blown away the box office, and that is a character that continues to do big business, for Sony and Marvel for sure.
Yeah, it's true. They spun it out into a very successful, animated, franchise with the Into the Spider-Verse or the Spider-Verse movies. And they even had stuff like Madam Web, which came out, which I heard was not good. I haven't seen it, but they've got the Venom movies too. They've definitely taken Spider-Man and kind of spun him out into a lot of different
Yeah, yeah,
successful properties.
you like to spun Spider-Man out? Like,
Yeah,
you're a pun guy?
yeah. Of course, I'm a pun guy, Max. You know me. I'm also a dad now too, so I'm gonna be making puns wherever I can.
Yeah. Okay, I've been doing a lot of talking. We did talk about one James Cameron earlier. Would you like to talk about one of his movies?
Absolutely. So another movie from my list is Terminator 2, which is another one of my all-time favorites. I've seen it so many times. um, and it's speaks to how much I enjoy it because it's not a short movie. It's like over 2 hours, and I think the director's cut's more like 2.5 hours. And I'm not one to watch long movies, but it's just so well done, so well paced, such a great, world building in it, expanding on the first Terminator movie, such great action set pieces. I love Arnold Schwarzenegger in it. I love Linda Hamilton, Edward Furlong. He's a little shithead, but he does it great. And Robert Patrick as the T-1000. He's great at playing villains. Robert Patrick. It's uh, it's just I don't know. It works for me on so many different levels as an action movie, as sci-fi. Uh, the score, the action, storyline about artificial intelligence and grappling with our humanity. It all just kind of works for me. So, I've seen it in the movie theater once. I think we talked about this in a recent episode when they re-released it in 3D, and that was fun, even though the 3D did literally nothing for the movie. And this was one I watched growing up. I've been very close to my grandpa. He always loves movies, and I'd spent a lot of time hanging out with him, and he had a very robust action movie VHS collection. And Terminator 2 was one we watched a fair amount.
Yeah, I think for me, like Terminator 2, at least for the longest time, Evan, I only saw Terminator 2. I heard that it was like one of the best
Mhm.
sequels of all time and stuff like that. So
It is.
I started with watching Terminator 2. It took me a long time to watch the first Terminator. So it, I always knew Schwarzenegger's character as sort of a good guy when of course that was like the big twist here and the sequel. And I like it for all the reasons you mentioned. I think Linda Hamilton's portrayal, she's one of the most iconic uh, female characters in cinema. I think Sarah Connor, along with
Mhm.
Ripley from Aliens, or I would include Furiosa in that list for sure.
Mhm.
As very memorable female characters, and uh, I just really dig Terminator 2. I find it I love that part near the end where, like, they're trying to escape and, like, the child actor is like, "Oh, shoot him in the kneecaps," like, he's, like, not allowed to kill anybody, so he just, like, makes a purpose to shoot them all in the kneecaps.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a charming relationship between Edward Furlong and Arnold Schwarzenegger's characters in that movie. And it really is interesting seeing the Terminator as a character evolving and learning from human behavior and ending, in a place that still kind of just chokes me up at the end when he lowers himself into the
Yeah, it does a thumbs up.
yeah, it's oh boy.
And they've tried
But
many times to do different things with the Terminator franchise, whether or not, it was a Terminator 3 movie where they like say, "Oh well, they didn't actually save the day in Terminator 2."
yeah.
Something else came around, and they have to try to stop that too. Then of
Yeah,
course,
and I've seen all of those movies, and I feel like mostly they were diminishing returns, but I have to say I was actually quite pleased with Terminator Dark Fate, which brought Sarah Connor, Linda Hamilton back into the fold, and I thought that was actually a really fun movie.
yeah, I liked that one too. I'm glad you said that because that's where I was going to lead to. I never saw Terminator Salvation, but I saw Terminator Genesis, and that was real bad.
Yeah, it was quite bad.
But yeah, big fan of Terminator 2. That was another movie that really pushed technology forward. Unsurprisingly, I guess, because James Cameron was is at the forefront of doing that. Whether it was with his movies like The Abyss, or Terminator, or Titanic, or
Mhm.
the Avatar movies.
Totally, and, one thing you're actually reminding me of a point I forgot to make earlier is that one of the reasons I think it's so amazing is that the special effects really still hold up in this movie, like, they don't look dated like, when you watch other movies, and there's a movie I'll talk about later, in what we've been watching, where the special effects don't hold up so great, on rewatch, but this one, I think the effects still look really good. Everything here is just so polished, and I think, it's speaks volumes for a movie that came out in 1991 that still looks this damn good.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. And it's what's unfortunate I've heard, Evan, is at least like it has a very difficult time on home video. The releases, like I've heard the like whether or not it's been Blu-rays or 4Ks, it's just like it's a very difficult title that to get right on home video, and I hope that there's a version soon that like people can call like definitive. But I'm kind of jealous. You've said you've seen Jaws and Terminator 2 in the movie theaters. These are movies that I've never seen in the movie theaters, and I certainly need to go out of my way. Some of my favorites, and I'd probably really enjoy
Mhm.
that.
You
Uh,
would. I guarantee you would. You'd have a blast.
I actually saw like the one time there's these Jaws screenings where like you can sit like in a giant pool in an inner tube and watch Jaws. And I was like, that sounds like a blast.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
Anyways, my last movie that I wanted to mention here during the summer blockbusters is a Robert Zemeckis film
Ooh.
called Back to the Future. This film is conglomeration of just like a lot of things together to make exceeds its expectations, right? Because I don't know,
Mhm.
Robert Zemeckis certainly he was working at the height of his power during this era, and he had the perfect lead in Michael J. Fox. He had so much charisma. Maybe like Michael J. Fox is the kind of guy you could imagine would play Peter Parker. Speaking about like
Yeah,
these kind of
he
nerdy,
could.
kind of funny character roles. Um, but the movie has Michael J. Fox, and you know he lives in this town, and I think it takes place in like the 1980s. I think.
1980. Yeah,
Yep.
1985 is where he starts.
Yeah, and he has a class bully and uh, Biff, and um, he
Well,
has
Biff is his dad's bully.
yeah his dad,
His dad's bully is still terrorizing him as an adult.
yeah, and he is friends with this mad scientist, and played by Christopher Lloyd, and it's really their relationship that is their chemistry, if you will, together is what
Yeah.
really drives. But here's a pun for you: Back to the Future, and they get into trouble where these characters are trying to steal the technology that Christopher Lloyd's working on, and they're in their custom DeLorean, and they go back 30 years into the past. Well, you find something with quantum theory and everything like that, that if the events in the past don't play out exactly the same, there's going to be some trouble, and Michael J. Fox will cease to exist in present day 1985. So he
Mhm.
has to kind of get involved in connecting his mother and father together in their relationship at prom. And it's a lot of fun to see like how they go back in time, and um, the characters of the movie. Like you mentioned, Biff was the father's bully, but he's also the father's bully in the past. But now Michael J. Fox's character has to like come between them.
Mhm. Help
Uh,
stand up to him, teach his dad to stand up to him.
yeah, and then that might change how things play out in the future. Then there's some great parts in the finale parts of that movie, right, Evan? Like whether or not
Mhm.
like Michael J. Fox is on stage playing like Johnny Be Good, and he's like, "Oh, you guys aren't ready for this one yet, but your kids will love it." And of course, trying to get back into the present day with hitting the electrical wire at the right time of the clock, and like
Mhm. Yep.
Christopher Lloyd has to go up there and connect the power right at the right time, and I just find that movie just a lot of fun. It hits a lot of the right notes. And I guess what's even more genius is that Back to the Future 2 is almost just as good. It's amazing that they were able to have the continuity like that between 1 and 2, and just like make some really fantastic movies. But yeah, I think Back to the Future is a lot of fun. You mentioned to me before the show that this is also another one of your favorites. What resonates to you with Back to the Future?
Well, I've probably watched this almost, if not as many times as Raiders of the Lost Ark, so I've seen it many times. It has infinite rewatch value to me, and what I love is that it came from such a simple premise of Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale thinking, "Oh, I wonder what our parents were like when they were in high school," and that's like the whole premise is like traveling back in time and seeing what his parents were like in high school, and I think that just creates such a cool story here of like seeing what his parents were like you mentioned, playing, matchmaker and all that stuff. But for me, what it really boils down to, and I think this is, this speaks volumes about the kind of movie it is and the filmmaking, is the lightning bolt at the clock tower scene. And I've seen this movie, I don't even know how many times, so many times. And I think the mark of a good movie is when you watch a scene like that, you watch the lightning bolt at the clock tower, and every time you watch it, there's that slight worry in the back of your mind, maybe this time he won't make it. And I think that's what when people ask me, like, "Why do you love Back to the Future so much?" That's always what I go to. Yeah, and you're like, Michael J. Fox, very charismatic, great as Marty McFly. So glad they didn't use Eric Stoltz. Eric Stoltz, fine actor, was not right for this part. I'm glad that they ended up going with, Michael J. Fox. They originally wanted him, they couldn't get him. They got him, thankfully. But it's stuff like that. It's seeing the lightning bolt at the clock tower and just feeling so tense, so on the edge of your seat that all these factors have to come together absolutely perfectly for him to make it back, to Back to the Future.
So before we move on to your next movie, Evan, I want to know: have you watched the Michael J. Fox documentary? Still, I think, and like whether or not it goes into Back to the Future or if it just goes into his life and his conditions.
I haven't seen it yet. It's
Okay.
definitely on my list because I do love Michael J. Fox. I think he's a great actor, and he's had a very interesting career. I mean, it's especially in his more recent years, in his arc on, The Good Wife. I thought he was great in that show and doing something just totally different and playing a heel, which he I feel like doesn't had a chance to do very often, aside from The Frighteners, which is another great movie if you haven't seen it, listeners. It's one of those ones that kind of like flew under the radar, I think, for a lot of people.
All right. And then wouldn't it be right if we didn't circle back to Spielberg once again, a movie that we have already mentioned in passing. Evan, why don't you talk about our last featured movie here?
Sure. Yeah, I'll talk about Jurassic Park. A movie did you see that in the theater growing up, Max? Because I did, and it was
I d
amazing.
I did, yeah. My
Yeah.
father took me to a screening, I'll never forget, and, like, I had my eyes closed for, like, half the movie because I'm, like, 7 years old going to see Jurassic Park, and that movie is intense.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it was pretty scary for kids our age when we saw it, but, it's another one of those movies I've seen so many times. It's so rewatchable. It's the kind where if it's on TV, I'll probably stop and watch it because I
Yeah.
enjoy it so much. It's the art direction, the special effects, the leads are all really great. Even the kind of supporting characters, like Wayne Knight as, the snivelly, guy who's trying to screw everybody over. Um, and Samuel L. Jackson and his little bit part is great. It's, uh it's such a well-paced movie. The score, we've talked a couple times about score, but John Williams, man, that guy has a strong batting average, especially working with Spielberg, and I think, of all these movies that we've talked about, you know, John Williams' score really does play such a central part in their success, whether it's Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the Indiana Jones theme that he came up with, or even Jurassic Park, which has such an iconic theme that gets stuck in my head every time I watch or mention the movie. I went, uh, when I was in college, I went to Disney or no, I went to Universal with some
Yeah.
friends of mine, and they were so annoyed with me because the Jurassic Park theme was just stuck in my head, and I was humming it the whole trip, and they it got stuck in their head, and they're like, "Damn it, Evan, stop." So, yeah, it's tense. I think the effects look a little dated in places when you rewatch it. It's still pretty solid overall, and I think that's the combination of computer animation and animatronics and kind of using both and playing to the strengths of both. But, what about you, Max? How do you feel about Jurassic Park?
Well, maybe it's unsurprising that many of the movies that we mentioned here, actually all of them, received multiple sequels of movies trying to either at least capture the box office of the original, if not capture the quality. Jurassic Park, of course, has now had five sequels and is apparently getting another movie very soon from Universal. But
Ugh, my god.
yeah. I love Jurassic Park as well. I say like the six movies we picked here, I'm they're big favorites of mine. If we were just going on Hollywood high entertainment movies, these would definitely be on my list. Unfortunately, most of the time I'm kind of a more of a Rudy Poo type of guy and who wants like these high art films, whether it be Seven Samurai, which is going back for a theater tour for its 4K restoration. If people want to check that out, I think it's going to be in Boston soon too. But Jurassic Park, yeah, going to this park to see this idea of a theme park where they've brought dinosaurs back to life, and
Mhm.
you have Jeff Goldblum in this one. Of course, Jeff Goldblum's had a quite lengthy career, but I think he's also in that Invasion of the Body Snatchers movie that I mentioned with Donald Sutherland. Uh,
Yep, he is.
but here it felt like his he took on another level, and he doesn't even appear in this movie for very long, but he becomes such a beloved character, the voice of reason, if you will.
Mhm.
That they soon find out that not only I don't know if the park would have survived if there weren't like really malicious financial reasons why like people wanted to get in on it or steal from them. Like, would they have been
Mhm.
able to keep it going and actually make a theme park? I don't know, but certainly when you have something that great, people want a piece of it, and certainly that leads to the park shutting down and becoming a really terrifying disaster. And Evan, just like many of the other movies on this list, and Spielberg in general, the set pieces and Jurassic Park are amazing. Whether or not it's the children sitting in the car watching the water uh, kind of shake as the T-Rex approaches, or the tension as they're climbing this electric fence, and you're telling yourself you don't want the characters to turn on the electricity just that time,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
Spielberg and his editor are cutting back and forth and saying like how close they are to turning on the power. And um yeah, it's just a really great movie, ahead of its time. It's one of the few movies that have done like dinosaurs really well. That's another like people. We have the Godzilla and Kong movies, and those continue to do well. Those you can like argue like those are almost like dinosaur monster movies, but really Jurassic Park set the gold standard for how dinosaurs could be like depicted in films, and just like giving them the proper praise or attention that they needed. Too much of the future Jurassic Park movies would be too obsessed with making new dinosaurs, and like, oh,
Oh,
what
yeah.
what if we combine like two different dinosaurs to make like something that never existed? Like, I don't know. I like the purity of the original Jurassic Park. Call me boring, but
No, I don't think you're boring at all, Max. I think one of the key reasons that Jurassic Park succeeds is it captures the awe and the wonder of the characters experiencing dinosaurs and seeing them come to life and, kind of trembling in awe at their power and their, wild nature and the there's that great Jeff Goldblum line, "Life will find a way."
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that you can't tame nature. You can try, but there's all kinds of unforeseen factors and ways that, nature will prevail and the dinosaurs do, and I think that's the problem with some of the other films is that you mentioned they try to go bigger and crazier with the types of dinosaurs, and I feel like that's just not the way to make a good movie about this. Like, yeah, you can create some decent set pieces, but I remember watching the first of the Jurassic Worlds, and I haven't seen either of the follow-ups, but I remember feeling like the movie was in such a rush, and it was just all it really cared about was making big set pieces and not about grappling with the actual themes that make the world of Jurassic Park interesting or something
Yeah.
to kinda think about.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of it is like the danger of capitalism as well, but and then they play that up really in Jurassic World. But I'm with you, like the awe of seeing these dinosaurs, you can really feel it in the characters. I mean, the characters that they highlight in these movies, they live and breathe dinosaurs, and they're like, oh, you have a T-Rex, and the guy's like really smiling. He's like, we have a T-Rex, and you're
Mhm.
like, oh yeah, I can't wait. Um, but yeah, Spielberg knocked out of the park with that one. Another one of his really great movies, and there are countless great summer blockbusters, and certainly movies that just capture the essence of summer. We didn't really go into that theme as much, and you could go from movies. I think of another Harrison Ford movie, American Graffiti, The Last Day of School, or Dazed and Confused.
Mhm.
Like we talked about Richard Linklater recently.
Yep.
Um, you have, I think I don't know if I talked to you about it, but I haven't watched it yet. But Adventureland, that one seems
Yep.
like a summer park kind of movie.
Oh,
Uh,
absolutely. Yeah.
so there's a lot of great movies. I think of La Piscine with Alain Delon. A lot of great movies that capture the essence of summer as well. And
Yep. The
um,
Sandlot, I think we were
yeah,
talking about that when we hung
right.
out last week.
Um, but yeah, I think like as far as blockbusters go, if you haven't watched one of these, Evan, it's funny that we mentioned Jaws and Raiders because like when the nights that I during the pandemic and everything, we bought like an outdoor projector so we could still like kind of enjoy like projected movies. And
Mhm.
the movies I picked were Jaws and Raiders. Like those are the ones that I wanted to watch on an outside projector, and watch outside. So it's unsurprising that those are probably the ones I went to.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. They have, infinite rewatch value. So I think, yeah, if you haven't seen any of these few movies we've talked about, you should get on that, listeners. But even if you've seen them, they're pretty fun to revisit. So if you're looking for something where you can just kind of immerse yourself in it and enjoy the experience and not think too hard and have a really great time, I feel like any of these are you know, excellent options.
All right, Evan, would you like me to take the reins for a second for the outro?
Sure.
All right. So as always, you can follow us on X Twitter at It's the Pick Pod. You can email us at it's the pictures at gmail.com. You can find me at MH Colville on Twitter X, or the same way on Blue Sky. We have a presence on Letterboxd, and you can also find our podcast anywhere that you might listen to, whether it be Spotify or Apple Podcasts or YouTube, through their algorithm. We've actually been getting a lot of traffic through there lately, so that's another great way to listen to the show. Evan, where can they find you?
You can find me over at Spoiler Piece Theater, the film weekly film podcast, which you can find wherever you get podcasts, or you can follow me on social media. I'm Real Recon, and that's real as in film real, and that's on X, Threads, Instagram, Letterboxd, and Blue Sky, and I think I got all of them.
Evan, I'm waiting for Spoiler Piece Theater to come over the Blue Sky. I'm wondering when you'll be promoting over there.
One of these days, when we get over there.
You can also follow the newsletter, the It's a Pictures Substack newsletter. Recently, I haven't done too much with it. I did a in review post for the May, and then I previewed the Criterion Collection sale with some of my favorites, some of the selections from the Sound and Sight list, some movies that I consider essential Criterion releases, and also mentioning recent releases that you might enjoy. I have some other stuff, including my June in review coming up, maybe some reviews of some recent Criterion movies I watched, and I'm still working on a feature, Evan, where I was looking at movie trailers and how uh, the business of movie trailers and how they're made. So I might have
Hmm.
something about that coming on the newsletter soon.
Ooh, that sounds interesting. Looking forward to reading that. Yeah, for listeners, I subscribe to the It's the Pictures Substack newsletter.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's go to what you've been watching.
Sure. Max, you want to tell me what you've been watching?
Sure. So I'm gonna mix the first two kind of together because I watched them for review purposes. I received screeners from their respective distributors. The first one was Thelma, which is the new June Squibb movie. It's June Squibb, if you don't know, is a um, older actress now. She's in her 90s, and she's in this kind of like funny kind of action movie where she's with her grandson, and she's inspired by Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible movies. And when she gets um, kind of suckered into sending $10,000 away to a scam, she decides that she is going to get her money back, and she gets the help of the late actor Richard Roundtree, who played Shaft in the original Shaft movie, and together they go out on this little trip to find the person who stole the money from her. And uh, it's a pretty funny movie. It co-stars Parker Posey and Clark Gregg of the Marvel Universe and Agents of Shield movie. So it's fun, it's light, but that one played I think at Sundance, and people enjoyed it there more than I might have. The other one I watched was Janet Planet, which is an A24 release. This one stars Julian Nichols, and it's directed by a playwright, so it's maybe unsurprising that the movie is in three parts and really follows Julian Nichols' character and her 11-year-old daughter as over a summer, and the daughter is kind of like codependent on her mother because they seem to depend on each other with the father not in the picture, and it's really about how her interactions with her mother and the mother's overall interactions with the world and these three different people who come into their lives during that time period. And I wish I could say that I loved it as much as some of the reviews that I saw were, but I found it really slow, and
Mm,
I felt like maybe it was stuck too much in like being written by a playwright, and like that structure that I didn't connect with it as much. I don't know if I maybe wasn't in the right mindset or something, but um, I wasn't as enamored with Janet Planet as some of the raves that I saw.
that's too bad. I mean, I was listening to Mark Maron talk to Julian Nicholson on his podcast, and I think it's interesting seeing that this takes place in rural Massachusetts, Western Mass
Right.
specifically, because it, from what I know about Julian Nicholson as a person in real life, she actually her mom lived out there, and she spent a good amount of time out there. So I feel like there's definitely she's bringing some like autobiographical energy slash experience to the part. That's too bad that it's didn't work for you.
But on the other hand, Evan, I watched the latest entry in the Quiet Place franchise, Day One, and I really enjoyed this.
Oh, nice.
I So this one stars Lupita Nyong'o, and she is a cancer patient. She's pretty much at um the end of the road there. What hospice care. And so she doesn't really have long. She's just counting the days, and she keeps on passing the odds, and she's going into the city, because the city being New York, because the hospital she's staying at was outside the city, and they go see a show, and she's promised that she's going to get pizza, and the promise holds a little bit more for her than um maybe other people, because this would be an opportunity for her to have the pizza that she had growing up, and maybe one last chance at a memory before her passing. And all of a sudden, the the universe changes. They get attacked by the monsters that have been so prominent in the Quiet Place films, and when people speak, they get taken away. This movie is a PG-13 horror movie, so there's not a lot of maiming going on. It's like pretty much the aliens do the little sound effect jump scare, grab a person, and fly away. Um,
Okay.
watching it, I'm like, I'm okay with it not being like super scary, like bloody gory, but part of me is also like, I'd like to see the R-rated cut of this, or if one existed. Of course, the movie very much follows Lupita Nyong'o as she gets through this really uh, terrifying day, and she's with her trusty comfort animal, which is a cat. And I think the cat's name is Frodo or something, and the cat
Mhm.
would win like best animal award or something, because it's in the entire movie. This is a spoiler for the cat. The cat does not get a violent death. So if you love
Oh,
animals,
that's good.
yeah, if you love animals, you don't have to be worried about that. But I guess most prominently in the movie, Lupita Nyong'o comes across many different people, but I guess maybe a third way through the movie, she comes across a young man played by Joseph Quinn of Stranger Things fame, and he becomes like a co-lead, and it's easy to see why so many people like latched onto him in Stranger Things, and now he's getting all these bigger roles, because he has like um this stage charisma that, or presence, that like only these big Hollywood stars have. And I think what I wanted to add, Evan, too, is like Lupita Nyong'o, as we saw in Us a few years ago. Of course, her doing that terrific role for Jordan Peele's movie.
Mhm.
She's able to portray a lot of this emotion without speaking, which is obviously very important for a Quiet Place movie. And
Oh, yeah, I bet.
her face is so descriptive, and she's able to really guide us through this really terrifying day. But I really enjoyed it. I have a funny anecdote, Evan, where I bought tickets to see the movie, and it was the wrong theater. So
Oh, whoops.
I actually got into it 10 minutes late, and then I was like, "Oh, I missed some of the stuff here," but I'm like, "I don't know how much I missed." And then, like, I ended up just, like, waiting until the movie started up again and watched the first 10 minutes and then left. I was like, "I don't need I just wanted to see what I missed, and then I'm good." Um,
Nice.
but, I I normally don't, like, say, like, "Oh, you gotta see this in, like, the best theater possible," but if you have, like, one of those Dolby Atmos theaters, or, like, a really great sounding theater, these Quiet Place movies really benefit. And, oh, best of all, you don't need to have seen the first 2 Quiet Place movies. You can start here.
Oh, cool.
You don't need to see the other 2 to really get they're not mentioned at all. There's no continuity with them, so, uh, this is a great place to start.
Alright. Max, you may have convinced me to see it.
It's directed by the director who did that Nicolas Cage movie Pig a few years ago, and that movie really surprised me. It was like one of my favorite Nicolas Cage's performances. So I was happy to see that this one worked for me as well.
Okay. Alright. Cool. So, sounds like you've got a good smattering of things you've been watching. Anything else you wanted to mention?
Oh no, I want to hear what you've been watching.
Oh, cool. Yeah, lately I feel like I watch a lot of TV, lot less movies. Although I did just start watching The Bear season 3 think we're about halfway through. We finished episode 5. We're gonna be watching episode 6 probably after this recording. But so far, I have to say I'm enjoying it a lot. You know, it's tense as the show is and has been through the first 2 seasons. There was an episode about the first month of service now that they've redone the restaurant, and I was so stressed out the entire time, just so stressed out for them. Like, oh my god, it seems nerve wracking. Really interested to see where they're going in this season, but you know, the show has a plus guest star game. I was really particularly pleased by a specific guest star that popped up in the last episode I watched.
You weren't
Very surprising person who I was not
yeah.
expecting to show up in this show.
Does that is it one of the Fack brothers, family members?
Yes, it is
Yeah.
a Fact brother who we have not met yet, who I was like, what?" When he showed up, I couldn't even believe it, and that was a lot of fun, although, you know, I was talking with my wife, Shauna, about this, and feel like maybe the Fact brothers are getting a little too much screen time so far this season. Um, as much as they're fun to see, I feel like it's kind of like they're stealing scenes from other main characters,
Right.
that I feel like we could maybe focus on more of their drama. But I don't know. You've watched the whole 3rd season, right? So,
Yeah, I have.
um, were you without spoiling anything, were you pleased with where it landed, or were you feeling kind of like I've seen some mixed reviews of this season?
Yeah, it definitely feels like this is, like, maybe part 1 of, like, a two-part season 'cause a lot of
Okay.
things are this is not spoiling, but a lot of things are left kinda unresolved when you
Okay.
watch this season, and you'll really wish that you had more episodes afterwards.
I mean, I felt that way over the other 2 seasons that I watched. I felt like I wanted more. I wanted to keep going with it. So that's interesting and it's interesting and frustrating to hear.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you know what I think once we finish the season. But yeah, the other big thing I watched recently was a movie. It's kind of funny because it feels like it's relevant to our conversation about blockbusters in a number of ways. One, because it is a summer blockbuster. B, takes place around the 4th of July. And C, also stars Jeff Goldblum, who we were just talking about in Jurassic Park. So, yeah, I rewatched Independence Day.
Is this a
Um,
4th of July movie, Evan?
oh, absolutely, Max. It's called Independence Day. It's
Yeah.
about, you know, the human race fighting back against aliens on the 4th of July and kicking their ass. Yeah. It was so nice to rewatch this. What a cast. This movie has an amazing cast of characters. So many great actors. This movie, you know, was the most patriotic I've felt in a while when I watched it because I wish Bill Pullman was our president. Good God, he's
Yeah.
the best president in this movie. One of the best, I think, on-screen presidents in a movie that I've seen. He's just he's got so much charm. He's one of those like I'm gonna listen to people who are telling me I'm gonna listen to some experts, but I'm also gonna like use my instincts. And I think there's something so amazing about the fact that he, you know, he's a pilot and jumps in a fighter jet and joins, you know, everybody in this battle. He doesn't sit on the sidelines. I think that's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
But
then this the Independence Day is isn't it like a Robert Emmerich film? Like he's known for like doing these like big into the world movies, and I think maybe he did Day After Tomorrow. Uh,
yeah, this is Roland Emmerich, and yeah,
yeah,
he has done a lot of like big disaster movies, and I think yeah, this movie has a lot of those like oh you know blowing up the White House, blowing up other landmarks kind of thing. And I think I mentioned earlier that I feel like the effects in it look pretty dated in some places when you watch
yeah.
it. But I think
I
the
remember I,
charm of
I
the
remember
leads more
going to
than
the
makes up for it.
theater. I remember going to the theater and seeing this with a friend of mine, and I was so terrified when they were doing like the alien surgery sequence that we left the theater, and it was like years before I saw the movie all the way through because that scared me so bad.
Oh, that is a scary scene. Yeah, with the aliens and the surgery, and Brent Spiner is doing the surgery. Star Trek fans, Data.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's a freaky scene for sure. Will Smith is great in this. Him and Jeff Goldblum make an odd pair, but they really work well together later in the movie when they've got to fly the ship to the mothership uh, to take down the alien forces. Judd Hirsch is great as Jeff Goldblum's father in this. He's always so underrated, and I don't know. I think we now know why Randy Quaid was so great at playing a head case after watching, after seeing his antics over the last few years. He's really unhinged in real life, and that's
Yeah.
why he's so good at playing this alcoholic ex fighter pilot alien abductee in this movie. But he nails it. I think he's like the right kind of crazy for this role, and yeah, I just had so much fun rewatching Independence Day. It's been a number of years since I've seen it, and I've always really liked it, but I was so glad to revisit it this Independence Day. Max, are you a fan?
Yeah, I like this movie quite a bit. I don't know if John and I ever did. We used to do like our disaster movies like late August because there's like really nothing to talk about, and we just watched like old disaster movies. But this was definitely one we were both really familiar with, and
Mhm.
I think like you mentioned Bill Pullman and like his big monologue sequence is so memorable, and I just love watching that in the movie in general. Is just
Mhm.
a lot of fun. This kind of it's end of the world stuff, but it's an enjoyable watch. It's not dark. Well, I guess it's dark at some points, but
Yeah, but
it's
it's
crazy.
not too dark.
Yeah.
It's like it's still it's a fun disaster movie, alien invasion movie, but still, pretty they keep it pretty light on it. It's pretty light on its feet in terms of not getting too somber. So yeah, oof, that's what I've been watching. And I think that wraps us up for this episode, unless there's anything else I'm forgetting.
No, we went pretty long. I think like we really enjoyed ourselves talking about some of our favorite movies, so maybe that's not all that surprising.
No, I knew it was gonna be hard to kind of keep it short on some of these movies, but yeah, I'm glad we picked this topic. It was a lot of fun to talk about some of these films that I've loved and I've seen a million times, and I haven't had a chance to really like talk about on a show. So this was a lot of fun. This conversation. All right. Well, if that wraps us up for this episode of It's the Pictures, and thank you as always for listening, and we'll see you next episode.
All right, thanks everybody. Bye.